clouds. They say it's better when you look back on the clouds. Yeah, I don't need to feel a thing. I just need to know just what it brings. I'm walking to the line. I'm walking on the path that terrified. Just to find I ain't afraid. You'd be the same if you knew I'd operate. So come with fire, come with shots. No matter what, I give it everything I got. Play it dirty, play it God. No matter what, I give it everything I got. I call the shots and they take everything I got. No matter what, I give it everything I got.
Scars. Act 3, First Light. Chapter 14. Scarred City. Location, the Light HQ, Safe House Beta. Mission District, San Francisco. Of the meta layer, the green room, the scene opens in the abstract theater of the mind. A singular spotlight, harsh as an interrogation lamp, cuts through the void. The dreamscape, welcome to the greatest show two people are watching. Thank you, and fuck everyone else. I'm standing center stage. It's not the chipped concrete of the mission. It's a stadium made of black glass and neon veins. I'm wearing the poncho, the mask is polished porcelain, and the mic stand is a katana stabbed deep into the floorboards. The crowd is a sea of faceless mannequins, plastic and hollow, clapping with hands that don't make a sound. Shit is about to get real with the crew, I tell the silence. My voice echoes, bouncing off the rafters like a rubber bullet. I put the kids to bed. I put Sage to bed. I love the woman, she's got style, but she talks too much. Too many tea metaphors, not enough distortion. She treats the apocalypse like a gossip column. I treat it like a mosh pit. I grab the mic. It screams. Feedback loop. High gain. The setting is a day later. Me and Helena just woke up. It is Era 3, babies. And if you have not guessed by now, I will narrate this act. I lean into the mic, the grin stretching under the mask. Narrative vector initialized. Pacing check. We're dragging the tempo. Let's cut the exposition and get to the blood. 2. The hangover from hell. My eyes snapped open. No spotlight. Just the dull, flickering hum of emergency fluorescence and the smell of stale recycled air mixed with the copper tang of old blood. My body felt like I'd been used as a speed bump for a freight train. That's the shadow price for you. You burn the flow, you pay the toll. I'd been out for 24 hours, paying off the debt of that stunt at the Civic Center. I sat up. My spine popped like a string of firecrackers going off in a trash can. Morning, sunshine, I grunted. My voice sounded like gravel in a blender. We still alive, or is this the boring part of hell? On the adjacent cot, Helena Shadowfang was already rebooting. She doesn't wake up like a normal person. She initializes. Her eyes snapped open, the crimson irises glowing instantly in the dim light. She sat up in one fluid motion, checking her commas before she even checked her pulse. Still here, she hissed. Her voice was a low scrape, terse and sharp. Unfortunately, she looked at me. The twin demon flow hummed between us, a dark electric tether. She looked like a nightmare dressed in tactical gear, but I saw the fatigue in the set of her shoulders. We were both running on empty, fueled only by the stubborn refusal to die. Across the room, the rhythm section was holding it down. Florence, we're calling her tempo now, keep up, was pacing back and forth, vibrating with enough nervous energy to power a small city. Kwame, the anchor, stood by the sealed blast door, a statue of black basalt and gold-woven fabric. He hadn't moved. He probably hadn't blinked in a day. Yo Blade, Florence said. She stopped pacing. She looked wrecked. Her eyeliner was smudged. Her Brooklyn swagger deflated. She didn't use the slang. She sounded scared. That was new. That was bad. You gotta see this. She pointed to a bank of monitors she'd jury-rigged to the facility's backup generator. What is it, kid? The cable bill overdue? I swung my legs off the cot, fighting the urge to vomit. Make it quick. The pacing in this chapter is already sluggish. I wish, she muttered. Kwame and we picked up a broadcast while you two were in recharge mode. It ain't just the mission, Blade. It ain't just San Francisco. She tapped a key. The screens flickered. Static. Then maps. Global maps. I walked over, dragging my boots. I looked at the screen. Red zones were blooming across the globe like blood and water. Paris. Tokyo. New York. London. The entire map was a festering wound. It's everywhere, Kwame said, his voice deep, resonating in the small room like a war drum. The Genesis strain. It has unraveled the tapestry of the world. The population, nearly half, are gone. Or changed. I looked at the corner of the screen. Global casualty estimate, 47%. For a second, I felt the yami inside me surge, that dark tide of guilt wanting to rise up and drown me. My fault? I thought about the Alchemist Tower. The soul fire. The explosion. Did I do this? Did I break the world because I was too angry to stop? But then I looked at the sheer scale of it. The timestamps. The spread. The math didn't add up. Even on my worst day, I ain't this efficient. This was industrial. This was cosmic. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. A laugh bubbled up, dry, jagged, and dark. It sounded like metal shearing. Blade? Florence stepped back, looking at me like I'd finally snapped. The world is cooked? And you're laughing? I'm laughing, kid, because I thought I was the chef, I said, a twisted grin spreading under my mask. I thought my screw-up broke the world. I thought I was the main character of the apocalypse. But this? I gestured to the ruining of nations. This is serving size. We've been living in the gutter. Now everyone else just moved downstairs. I leaned against the console, feeling the cool metal against my palms. We ain't dead. You ain't dead. Fang is... Well, she's Fang. That means we got work. Work? Florence scoffed, her voice pitching up. Doing what? Delivering pizzas in the end times? Look at that map, Jeremiah. There is no outside to escape to. Nah, I grinned, tapping the glass screen. We call the landlord. Florence, you're the tech wizard with the Brooklyn hex rhyme. Hook this pile of junk up to the dedicated line. We're calling the light. 3. The cold call, entering the narrative dead zone. It took Florence 10 minutes of cursing and 3 percussive maintenance strikes kicking the server tower to clear the static. I stood there, arms crossed, critiquing the scene. Too much techno-babble. Audience is getting bored. Needs more tension. Got a signal, she announced, purple sparks of art current dancing between her fingers. Encrypted. High level. Damn, the architecture is ancient. Just patch it through, I snapped. We're burning daylight and I hate the dark. The main hollow table in the center of the room hissed. Blue light coalesced, flickering, then sharpening into a figure. She stood tall, radiating an aura of absolute terrifying calm. sus.The. The director. I hadn't seen her in years. She looked exactly the same. Ageless. Cold. She looked like she viewed reality as a spreadsheet she was about to edit. Identify, she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the room like a scalpel. Clinical detachment flow. We're the cleaning crew, I said, stepping into the light. You left a mess in aisle 5, director. Kiesza's eyes shifted to me. She didn't blink. Jeremiah Crumpler. Call sign, Obsidian Blade. Status, active. Unexpected. I get that a lot. And the others, she continued, her gaze sweeping over the team like a barcode scanner. Florence Baxter, Kwame Daisuke Okoro, Helena Lewis, the surviving assets of the San Francisco cell. Assets? Helena hissed, sliding off the counter. The air temp dropped 5 degrees. Her hand hovered over her comma. Terminology is irrelevant, Shadowfang, Kiesza replied, cool as ice water. Survival is the metric. My data indicates you are currently trapped within Safe House Beta. We noticed the smell, I said. Smells like apathy and wet dog. Listen, Director K, we need an extraction. Or a nuke. I'm flexible. The map says the world is gone. Tell me something I don't know. Kiesza paused. She looked at me, then at Florence, then at Kwame. She seemed to be calculating the variables. "You are operating under a misconception," she stated. "You believe the infection began with the collapse of the spire, didn't it?" Florence asked. "No," Kiesza said. "The event you witnessed, the fall of the alchemist's tower, was merely a localized symptom. The Genesis strain is a temporal rewrite. A time wave struck the planetary timeline approximately 30 hours ago." The room went silent. 30 hours. That was right before the spire fell. A time wave? Kwame rumbled. "You speak of altering history? The wave overwrote the baseline reality," Kiesza explained, her voice devoid of empathy. "To the unauthorized population, the 53% who remain, the world has always been this way. They do not remember the sun. They do not remember the blue sky. To them, the miasma is the natural state of the atmosphere." She leaned forward, the hologram zooming in. "But you remember. Why?" Florence whispered. "Why us? Because you possess the flow," Kiesza said. "The flow acts as a temporal anchor. It insulates your cognitive functions from the rewrite. You are ghosts in a machine that has been reformatted. You perceive the error because you are part of the source code." I felt a chill run down my spine. It wasn't just a virus. It was a retcon. The universe had been edited, and we were the typos left on the page. "So everyone else," I said, my voice low. "The people on the street. The cops. The civilians. They have adapted," Kiesza said. "Their memories have been reconciled to fit the scarred Genesis. They believe they are fighting a plague that has lasted for decades. You are the only ones who know it has only been a day." That's horrifying," Florence said, clutching her stomach. "That is reality," Kiesza corrected. "Now, to the pragmatic application of this data. Extraction is currently untenable. The scarred Genesis flow has compromised aerial vectors. However, strategic necessity dictates we establish a foothold." She swiped her hand, and the hologram changed to a topographical map of San Francisco. "A mountain peak pulsed red, Twin Peaks," Kiesza said. "The altitude provides a natural buffer against the miasma. I have a supply drop inbound, weaponry, flow stabilizers, and nutrition. But the drop zone is currently contested by miasma scuttlers." "You want us to hike up a mountain through a zombie apocalypse to pick up your groceries?" Florence asked, incredulous. "Deadass? I want you to secure a lifeline," Kiesza corrected. "Without those stabilizers, Mr. Crumpler's bipolar flow will destabilize within 48 hours, resulting in catastrophic failure." She looked right at me. She knew. She knew about the Hikari/Yami split. The ticking clock. The shadow price. "She's got a point," Kwame rumbled. "We cannot remain here. This tomb will become our grave." I looked at the team, Florence, terrified but defiant. Kwame, the mountain. Helena, the blade. "Fine," I said. "We do the hike, but we need a name. Surviving Assets sounds like a bad punk band. And if we're going to fight through a retconned reality, we need branding." I looked at the map, then at the team. "The world is scarred," I said, testing the weight of the words. "We're the ones living in the wound. We're the Bay Area Scar Krew." Kiesza's hologram flickered. Was that a smirk? "Probably just a glitch. The designation is acceptable," she said. "Secure the Twin Peaks landing zone. The light is watching." Kiesza out. The hologram vanished. 4. Name, Saga of Scars. Act 3, First Light. Chapter 15. It's like Fallout. Active voice. The Obsidian Blade, Jeremiah Crumpler. Era context, Era 3, Scarred Genesis. Location, Mission Dolores Park, the market. 1. The immutability of the meta layer, the green room. The spotlight hits the center of the black stage. I'm tuning a guitar that has strings made of razor wire. The sound is screechy, metallic, and perfect. The Dreamscape, welcome back to the freak show. I'm standing on the stage of your subconscious, and let me tell you, the acoustics in here are terrible. Too much echo from the trauma, not enough soundproofing on the memories. We're entering the city building phase of the RPG, I tell the empty seats. This is where we grind for XP, buy upgrades, and realize the economy is rigged. Standard MMO logic. I strum a chord. It sounds like a car crash in C major. The pacing is about to shift. We're moving from survival horror to post-apocalyptic western. Think cowboys, but with more neon and less dysentery. And the zombies? Oh, the zombies are fabulous. Trust me. I lean into the mic, narrative vector set to controlled chaos. Let's go shopping. 2. Dolores Park, the Wild West of the apocalypse. We walked out of the fog and into a flea market. Mission Dolores Park wasn't a park anymore. It was a bazaar built on the bones of the old world. The grass was gone, replaced by packed dirt and duckboards. Makeshift stalls made of corrugated tin and blue tarps lined the pathways. Lanterns strung with glowing flow moss cast a sickly green light over the crowd. And what a crowd! It looks like a Renaissance fair for psychopaths, Florence whispered, her eyes wide. She wasn't wrong. People were openly carrying weapons, swords, customized Glocks, baseball bats with nails. There were no cops. Just lawmen wearing armbands made of yellow caution tape, carrying shotguns that looked like they could stop a truck. Welcome to Scar City, I muttered, scanning the perimeter. My Hikari eye was analyzing threat vectors. Sniper on the church roof. Pickpocket at 3 o'clock. Guy selling fresh meat that definitely isn't beef. It's like Fallout, but with better fashion sense and worse radiation. Fallout? Kwame asked. He loomed behind us like a bodyguard for a deity. You speak of nuclear winter? It's a game, big man, Florence said, not looking back. Open world. Post-apocalyptic. You scavenge for caps and fight mutants. Basically, our life, but with a save button. Kwame frowned. Life does not have a save button. It only has consequences. Buzzkill, Florence muttered. We need to blend in, Helena said. She was already moving differently, walking with a predator's swagger. Blade, the lawmen are watching. I nodded. Relax. We're just shoppers. Looking for a deal on the end of the world. We moved deeper into the market. The air smelled of roasting skewers, don't ask, ozone and unwashed bodies. It was vibrant. It was alive. It was the most beautiful, disgusting thing I'd seen in 24 hours. Blade, Florence nudged me. About Kiesza. She hooked us up with the supply drop intel. She's solid, right? I stopped. I looked at a stall selling vintage Era 1 electronics, i.e. iPhones that didn't work. Kiesza isn't solid, I said quietly. She's liquid. She fills whatever container she needs to be in. Don't trust the benevolence, Tempo. She's playing 4D chess, and we're just the pawn she's willing to sacrifice to take a rook. Comforting, Florence grimaced. And another thing, I added, looking at Helena. Me and Fang? We ain't just swinging swords anymore. We unlocked the skill tree. Helena smirked. She held up her hand, and a faint crimson mist of Yami curled around her fingers. I have mastered the demon flow. The rage, it listens to me now. And I tapped my Hikari eye. I figured out the cold flow. I can freeze the moment before it happens. So if things go south, stay close. We control the tempo. Irony, Florence snorted. That's literally my name. 3. The naming of the mountain. We reached a relatively quiet corner near the old tennis courts, which were now a fighting pit. 2 guys were beating each other with electrified chains, while a crowd bet cans of beans. We need to talk about you, I pointed at Kwame. He crossed his massive arms. I am listening. You need a handle, I said. Kwame is a good name. Strong name. But out here? In the Scar? You need a legend. I do not seek fame, he rumbled. It ain't about fame, Florence cut in. It's about branding. Look at you. You're huge. You're carrying a sword the size of a surfboard. You're an anchor, Samson, I said. Kwame blinked. The biblical figure? The one who brought down the temple? The one with the strength, I corrected. The one who held the weight. You grounded the soul fire, man. You took the weight of the city and put it into the dirt. You're the pillar. Kwame looked at his hands that had held back a literal apocalypse. He looked at the fighting pit, then back at us. Samson, he tested the word. It rolled deep in his chest. He was a flawed man. But he served a purpose. We're all flawed, big man, I grinned. That's the prerequisite for membership. Very well, he nodded. I am Samson. Dope, Florence grinned. Now let's go find some trouble. 4. Castro Street, the glamour zone. We pushed south, leaving the safe zone of the park. The vibe changed instantly. The lanterns turned pink and purple. The smell of ozone was replaced by cheap perfume and something metallic, like blood mixed with glitter. Entering Castro territory, I announced. Keep your heads on a swivel. This is undead drag queen turf. Undead? What? Samson asked, his hand drifting to his sword. Don't call them zombies, I warned. They hate that. They're from the dark realm. We turned the corner onto Castro Street, and the world went technicolor. The street was a runway. The buildings were draped in velvet and neon. And the gang, they were terrifying. Tall, pale-skinned figures with eyes like shark glass. They wore elaborate Victorian-era gowns fused with high-tech salvage, corsets made of circuit boards, wigs made of fiber-optic cables. They looked like vampires who raided a hot topic, Florence whispered. Careful, Helena hissed. Their resilience is off the charts. You have to dismember them to stop them. Suddenly, the street cleared. The music stopped. A figure emerged from the fog at the top of the hill. She was 7 feet tall, wearing a ball gown that looked like the painted ladies' houses had exploded and reformed around her. Her face was cracked porcelain, flawless and cold. She held a fan made of stained glass and razor wire. Grand Dame Sleighbell. The matriarch. Behind her, the army assembled. Scoogie, twitching like a glitch in the Matrix. Lorray, looking like a corporate executioner in a skin suit. And Ash, a psychedelic nightmare of tie-dye and blood. Well, 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 Sleighbell's voice boomed. It wasn't a rot voice, it was an opera singer's projection. Look what the fog dragged in. Fresh meat? Or just poor fashion choices? She snapped her fan shut. The sound was like a gunshot. You are in the glamour zone, darlings, she purred. And the cover charge is your soul. I stepped forward, my hand resting on Oathkeeper. My bipolar flow started to hum, the Hikari cooling my nerves, the Yami itching for a fight. We ain't here to party, your highness, I shouted up the hill. We're just passing through. Nobody passes through, Lorray said, raising a gold-plated shotgun. We are currently liquidating all assets. Run the combat algorithm, I muttered to the team. Florence tapped her gauntlets. I'm reading high-level shade flow from the big one. And is that spicy fire flow? The one with the shotgun? Spicy fire? Samson asked, confused. It burns your mana, not your skin, Florence translated. It drains your energy bar. Energy bar? Samson looked lost. It makes you tired, big man, Florence yelled. Don't get hit. Ash, the tie-dye nightmare, stepped forward and strummed a guitar made of bone. A wave of apathy spores rolled down the hill. Initiating boss battle, I grinned, pulling my mask up. Florence, drop the beat. Samson, be the wall. Helena, go fetch. The glamour squad screamed, a collective, harmonious shriek that shattered the windows of the storefronts. They charged. I looked at the camera. Okay, I said. Now it's a party. Scene end.
Name, Saga of Scars, Act 3, First Light, Chapter 16, Location, The Glamour Zone, Tuspe, Sage, The Echo of Aegis, The Rotting Rosary Protocol. 1. The Echo of Aegis. The vibe, high gothic camp meets post-apocalyptic grime. The tea, boiling. The narrative lens focuses. The air is thick with lavender fog, and the scent of ozone and stale mimosa. Sage, voiceover, echoing like a whisper in a crowded cathedral. Oh, look who decided to wake up and smell the necrosis. Jeremiah thought he could just tuck me in, didn't he? Put Sage to bed, he said. As if I'm some toddler with a sugar crash and not the omniscient narrator holding the strings of this little puppet show. You can't silence the commentary, darling. You can only turn the volume down until the bass makes your teeth rattle. Welcome back to the end of the world. We are in the Castro district, or as the locals call it now, the Glamour Zone. It's Era 3, and the aesthetic is strictly RuPaul's Drag Race meets Mad Max Fury Road. The buildings are rotting Victorian skeletons draped in neon velvet, and the fog, oh, the fog is simply dying to meet you. Our little band of misfits, the self-proclaimed Scar Krew, is currently huddled behind the wreckage of a burned-out trolley car, looking less like heroes and more like the before picture in an antidepressant commercial. Let's spill the tea, shall we? Scene on. The failure of the rock star. The mist in the Castro didn't just obscure vision. It felt invasive, like a damp hand sliding under your collar. It clung to the peeling paint of the Victorian townhouses, turning the street into a claustrophobic tunnel of pastel decay. Jeremiah Crumpler was vibrating. Not metaphorically. The man was actually twitching, a result of the Yami, shadow, flow coursing through his veins like liquid adrenaline laced with battery acid. He wore his new armor, a scavenged riot suit painted with chaotic sigils, like a second skin, but it was the mask that drew the eye. A high-tech, angular visor that completely obscured his face, turning him into a faceless void of aggression. He paced the small safe zone behind the trolley, his carbon steel staff clicking rhythmically against the asphalt. Okay, look, Jeremiah hissed, his voice distorted by the mask's modulator into a robotic growl. It's a simple breach and clear. I go center. I pop the Clover State. Full mania, no breaks. I draw every eye, every gun, every spell. While they're busy trying to kill the unkillable, you guys sweep the sides. He stopped, looking at the team, waiting for applause. He got silence. Samson stood like a statue carved from obsidian and regret. He wasn't wearing heavy plate anymore. The correction protocols had stripped him down to the essentials. He wore gray tactical weaving that hugged his frame, highlighting muscles that looked like they were carved from mahogany. The Aquafina sword was strapped to his back, a massive slab of African steel that hummed with a low, hungry frequency. That is not a plan, Samson said, his voice deep enough to be felt in the soles of your feet. That is a suicide note, written in crayon. Jeremiah threw his hands up. It's kinetic. It's loud. It's what the people want. The people want to live, Samson countered, stepping forward. He didn't loom. He simply occupied space with such absolute certainty that Jeremiah seemed to shrink. You are not a tank, Jeremiah. You are a glass cannon with a cracking psyche. If you run up that street, you die. And then we die trying to retrieve your corpse. Florence Baxter, Tempo, leaned against the rusted wheel of the trolley, checking the charge on her sonic gloves. She looked like a techno-goth mechanic, all purple webbing and exposed circuitry. Big guy's right, boss. You go center, you get turned into Swiss cheese. And not the good imported kind. The cheap stuff. She tapped the side of her sonic rifle, a jury-rigged nightmare of brass pipes and subwoofer magnets. We need structure. Samson and I take the street. I provide the noise. He provides the void. You and the spooky twin take the roofs. Verticality, remember? Jeremiah scoffed, crossing his arms. The red LED in his mask's right eye flickered. Fine. Boring. Practical. I hate it. But fine. He snatched up the sonic rifle, which looked comically large in his hands. But I'm taking the left flank, and if I see something shiny, I'm shooting it. Helena Lewis, Shadowfang, didn't speak. She just melted out of the shadows near the rear bumper. She was a study in lethal minimalism, sleek, dark armor, twin commas hanging at her hips, and a stolen boomerang made of bone strapped to her thigh. She nodded once at Samson, then vanished up the fire escape of the nearest building. Radio check, Jeremiah grumbled, tapping his helmet. Channel 666. Let's make some bad decisions. Sage's note. Oh, the tension. You could cut it with a dull spoon. Samson is practically radiating dad energy, and Jeremiah is sulking like a teenager who just got grounded from the multiverse. But the pieces are on the board. The king, the rook, the knight, and the whatever Jeremiah is. The jester with a hand grenade? Let's see how they play. Scene 2. The runway. Combat initiation. The street was silent. Too silent. The kind of silence that usually precedes a jump scare or a very expensive lawsuit. Samson and Tempo walked down the center line of Castro Street. They moved with a synchronized rhythm, Tempo bouncing slightly on the balls of her feet, Samson gliding with the terrifying grace of a apex predator who knows he doesn't need to run. Contact front, Samson said calmly. Out of the pink fog they emerged. The exiles. Now, darlings, forget what you know about zombies. These weren't shuffling corpses. These were queens. 7 feet tall, skin the color of alabaster, wearing tattered corsets, combat boots, and wigs that defied gravity and God. They moved with a jerky, synchronized elegance, like marionettes with their strings cut. Fresh trade, one shrieked, its voice a rusted hinge. Drop the beat, Samson ordered. Florence slammed her gauntleted fists together. Volume up! A shimmering wall of purple distortion, a sonic shield, erupted in front of them just as the exiles opened fire. The air filled with the screech of jagged metal and the thwip-thwip of nail guns. The projectiles hit the sonic barrier and disintegrated into powder. Reloading! Florence shouted, the shield flickering as her capacitors whined. Samson didn't flinch. He stepped through the fading shield. My turn. He didn't block. He flowed. An exile swung a rusted stop sign at his head. Samson pivoted, a subtle Tai Sabaki shift of the hips, and the sign missed him by a millimeter. In the same motion, his Aquafina flashed. It wasn't a chop. It was a whisper of steel. The exile's arm separated from its shoulder with a wet SHHHHK. Above them, on the left roof, Jeremiah was having the time of his life. I have the high ground, he yelled, leveling the sonic rifle. It's over, Anakin. Or whatever your name is. He aimed at a cluster of exiles rushing Samson. He pulled the trigger. VROOOOM. The beam of dissonance went wide. Wildly wide. It missed the exiles entirely and slammed into the support beams of a massive, neon-lit billboard that read, Gentrification is the real virus. The beams shattered. The billboard groaned. tilted, and then slid off the roof with a screech of tearing metal. It crashed onto the street below, flattening the entire group of exiles in a cloud of dust and glitter. Calculated! Jeremiah screamed into the comms. Did you see that? Geometry. Physics? I meant to do that. You missed. Helena's voice crackled, dry as a martini. I reshaped the battlefield, Jeremiah retorted, dropping the rifle. Guns are for cowards anyway. He drew his snake-eye machete, a nasty, serrated blade that looked like it had been dipped in motor oil. Going close quarters. Cover me! On the right roof, Helena was a silent storm. She stood on a gargoyle, spinning the bone boomerang. She threw it. The weapon didn't just fly, it hunted. It curved around a chimney, took the head off an exile sniper, banked off a satellite dish, and returned to her hand with a satisfying thwack. Clear, she whispered. Sage's note. Notice the difference in style, darlings. Helena is surgical. Jeremiah is improvisational jazz with a high body count. And Samson? Samson is just showing off. Look at him. Scene 3. The grind, center lane. The street was becoming a slaughterhouse. The exiles were relentless, pouring out of the ruined gay bars and boutiques like a tidal wave of tule and violence. Tempo, suppression. Samson roared, sidestepping a blast of green fire. On it! Florence cranked a dial on her wrist. Bass cannon, locked. She pointed her palms down the street. The air distorted. A cone of pure vibrational force slammed into the advancing horde, liquefying organs and shattering bones. The exiles crumbled, their resilience meaningless against physics. But amidst the chaos, a new threat emerged, not the foot soldiers. The queens. The fog thickened, turning from pink to a bruised, angry purple. The temperature dropped. From the balcony of the derelict Castro Theater, Grand Dame Slay Belle descended on a cloud of sentient mist. She was a vision of Victorian horror, a ball gown made of architectural debris, a face of cracked porcelain, and a fan made of stained glass and razor wire. Behind her, the squad, Scuggy, glitching like a bad video file, Lorray, polishing a gold shotgun, and Ash, strumming a guitar made of a human pelvis. You have ruined my pavement, Slay Belle rasped, snapping her fan open. And your outfits are derivative. Derivative? Jeremiah shouted, leaping from the roof to land on top of a burnt-out taxi. This is custom post-apoc chic. Do you know how hard it is to get bloodstains out of Kevlar? Kill them, Slay Belle ordered. But save the loud one. I want to make a lamp out of him. Scene YV, the mismatch. The struggle. The battle exploded instantly, and immediately the crew was in trouble. They had picked their targets, but the matchups were all wrong. Jeremiah versus Ash, the wild card. Jeremiah lunged at the tie-dye nightmare, his machete swinging. Ash just laughed and strummed a chord. Twang. A cloud of hallucinogenic spores erupted from the guitar. Jeremiah ran straight into it. Instantly, the street dissolved. The exiles weren't drag queens anymore. They were cows. Giant, judging dairy cows from Modesto. No! Jeremiah screamed, flailing at the air. I don't want your milk. I'm lactose intolerant. He swung wildly, hitting nothing but purple smoke. Ash danced around him, slicing his armor with guitar strings. Tripping balls, honey. Let the music take you. Samson versus Lorray, the enforcer. Samson moved to intercept the woman in the blood-red suit. He prepared his mandingo flow, ready to absorb energy. Lorray leveled her gold shotgun. Audit this. Boom. It wasn't a laser. It wasn't fire. It was a solid, localized slug of soulfire-hardened amber. Physical mass. Samson's absorption field did nothing. The slug hit him square in the chest. Crack, Samson gasped, the impact bruising ribs even through his weave. He staggered back. He couldn't absorb mass. He had to dodge. But Lorray was fast, racking the slide. Boom. Another slug clipped his thigh. Inefficient, Lorray droned. Your assets are frozen. Tempo versus Scuggy, the glitch. Florence tried to track the pixelated figure. She fired sonic blasts, but Scuggy was never where she aimed. Lag switch, Scuggy hissed, appearing behind Florence. A data scythe slashed across Florence's backplate, sparking against the tech. I can't hit her, Florence yelled, panic rising in her voice. She's pinging all over the map. Helena versus Slay Belle, the boss. Helena threw her knives. Slay Belle snapped her fan. A gust of Carl fog swallowed the blades. The mist was dense, cold, and blinding. Helena was enveloped. She couldn't see. She couldn't target. Blind little bat, Slay Belle whispered from everywhere at once. The crew was breaking. They were fighting individuals, not a unit. Sage's note. Oh dear. It seems our heroes have forgotten the golden rule of RPGs. Check the elemental resistances before you aggro the boss. Jeremiah is fighting his own trauma, Samson is trying to eat bullets, and Florence is lagging out. This is the part where I would usually intervene, but the contract says let them suffer. So, popcorn anyone? Scene V, the remix, the glitch step. Blade! Samson's voice cut through the chaos, strained but authoritative. Switch! We are mismatched. Use the glitch! Jeremiah, currently fighting a hallucination of his high school guidance counselor, shook his head. The red Yami energy flared in his eye. He needed focus. He needed clarity. Right, Jeremiah gritted out. Remix time. He tapped the side of his mask. Protocol. Multi-track. Jeremiah didn't just move. He fractured. For a split second, the Yami flow accelerated his timeline so drastically that he existed in 3 places at once. Glitch step. Clone 1 blurred toward Lorray. Clone 2 blurred toward Scoogie. The prime Jeremiah launched himself at Ash. Partner swap! Jeremiah screamed. The correction. Jeremiah slammed into Lorray. She leveled the shotgun, but he was too close, too fast. His machete hooked the barrel of the golden gun. Physical for physical, he roared. Let's dance, CFO. He wrenched the gun up. Boom. The slug shattered a street lamp. Jeremiah headbutted her, mask to nose. Crunch. Lorray stumbled back, stunned. Bang! The trippy one. Jeremiah yelled. Helena dropped from the fog, disengaging from Sleigh Bell. She landed in front of Ash. The spores puffed out, but Helena's Oni mask filtered the air. She didn't breathe. She didn't hallucinate. She spun, her twin kamas, catching the bone guitar. With a savage twist, she snapped the instrument in half. Ash shrieked as the music died. Samson. The fog! Samson turned his back on Lorray, now occupied by Jeremiah, and faced Sleigh Bell. The Grand Dame summoned a massive wave of heat-infused mist. Burn, darling, she hissed. Samson smiled. It was a terrifying expression. He sheathed his sword. He opened his arms. Mandingo flow, thermal vacuum. The heat hit him. It didn't burn. It spiraled, warping into a thin, screaming thread of light that sucked directly into his solar plexus. The fog froze instantly, dropping out of the air as snow. Sleigh Bell gasped, shivering. You stole my ambiance. Tempo! The glitch! Florence, freed from Scoogie, saw the pixelated assassin trying to rematerialize. You can't hide from sound, Florence yelled. She slammed her hands onto the pavement. Seismic drop. She didn't aim at Scoogie. She aimed at the ground. The entire street vibrated. Scoogie, needing solid matter to anchor her glitch, was forced into visibility, vibrating violently. System crash. Florence cheered, blasting the destabilized queen with a concentrated beam of dissonance. Scoogie flew backward, crashing into a pile of mannequins. Sage's note. And there it is, the synergy, the flow. The moment where the messy garage band finally hits the chord together. It's almost poetic, disgustingly violent, but poetic. Scene 6. The unmasking. The tea spilled. The queens were down, battered, bruised, and lacking their usual poise. But this was the Castro. You don't stay down. The ground rumbled. The fallen exiles, the ones Samson and Jeremiah had dispatched earlier, began to twitch. Necrotic energy, green and vile, seeped from the sewers. Round 2, Jeremiah panted, spinning his staff. I've got enough juice for one more. Clang. A stray piece of the shattered gentrification billboard, loose from the earlier impact, chose that exact moment to surrender to gravity. A heavy iron bolt plummeted 3 stories and struck Jeremiah squarely on the side of the head. The high-tech mask shattered. Sparks flew. The clasps failed. The helmet clattered to the asphalt, spinning like a top. Jeremiah staggered, clutching his head. Ow. Uncool. Very uncool. He looked up. His face was exposed to the neon lights. The scars running down his cheek. The mismatched eyes, one brilliant holy blue, Hikari, the other deep bloody crimson, Yami. The sharp jawline, the distinct look of a man who had seen too much and slept too little. The battlefield froze. Sleigh Bell, who was currently trying to pull a piece of rebar out of her corset, squinted. She leaned forward, her cracked porcelain face shifting from rage to confusion. Hold the phone, she rasped. She raised a hand. The necromancy halted. The undead paused. Mid-groan, Sleigh Bell floated closer, ignoring Samson's raised sword. She stared at Jeremiah. Jerry? She asked. Jeremiah blinked, the red in his eye fading to a dull pink. He wiped blood from his forehead. Who? It is you! Lorraine shouted, dropping the broken shotgun. She adjusted her blood-red suit, looking suddenly less like a demon, and more like a disgruntled office worker. Oh my God, Jerry. From San Francisco. Era 2, the Pride Parade. Jeremiah's mouth opened. Lorraine, I was the one holding your hair back when you threw up in my limited edition Gucci handbag. Lorraine shrieked, pointing a manicured finger. You owe me $4,000. Ash sat up in the debris of her guitar. Wait, Jerry. The cute guy from the club? The one who pulled me out of the mosh pit when the alchemist's goons started shooting? You saved my life, babe. Skooky flickered into solid form, crossing her arms. And you dated me. For 3 weeks. Then you ghosted me. Said you had to find yourself in Japan. Jeremiah cringed. The memory hit him harder than the bolt. San Francisco. Era 2. Before the infection. Before the scar genesis. He had lived here. He had loved here. He had been a messy, chaotic, bisexual disaster here. I was going through a thing, Jeremiah mumbled, lowering his staff. The Yakuza, the ninja training. It was a whole arc. Sleigh Bell sighed, the tension leaving her shoulders. She snapped her fan shut. Well, this is awkward. We were about to eat your livers. I was going to saute them, Lorraine added helpfully. And here you are. Sleigh Bell continued, looking him up and down. Leading a team of, what are you calling yourselves? The Scar Krew? Tacky name, Jerry. Very tacky. It's catchy, Jeremiah protested weakly. Samson lowered his sword, looking between the undead drag queen and his leader. His stoic mask cracked, just a fraction. You know these demons? They are not demons, Samson, Jeremiah sighed, rubbing his temple. They're exes, friends. Drinking buddies. It's complicated. The tea, Sage whispered, her voice rustling through the dead leaves in the gutter, has been spilled. And it is scalding. Sleigh Bell smoothed her dress, kicking a severed zombie arm out of the way. Well, since we aren't killing each other, and since you clearly survived the time wave, do you boys want a drink? We have fermented radiator fluid. It has a lovely kick, and it pairs well with existential dread. Florence lowered her sonic gloves. Radiator fluid? It gets you there, Ash winked. Jeremiah looked at his team. They were battered, bleeding, and utterly confused. He looked at the queens, his former life staring back at him through dead eyes and heavy makeup. He shrugged. I've drank worse. To the glamour zone, Sleigh Bell declared, turning back toward the theater. Come along, darlings. Don't bleed on the carpet. Sage's post-show wrap-up. Well, wasn't that a delightful mess? We went from tactical incompetence to high-octane violence to a reunion episode of Real Housewives of the Apocalypse in under 20 minutes. Jeremiah's mask, literally and metaphorically. The filter is holding, but the cracks are showing. Samson proved he's not a tank. Good job, big guy. And Florence proved she can drop the bass even when the server is lagging. But let's not get too comfortable. Drinks with the undead usually end with a bill you can't pay. And we still have a mountain to climb. Stay tuned, darlings. The night is young, and the trauma is fresh. Chapter end. Name: Saga of Scars, Act 3, First Light, Chapter 17. Location: the Dreamscape / Twin Peaks, May, the Loop Weaver. 1. The narrative begins in a space that is not a space. It is the green room, Jeremiah's mental construct of the meta layer. It usually looks like a backstage dressing room, but today, the mirrors are rippling like water. Jeremiah Crumpler paced the floor, his boots making no sound on the velvet carpet. He was unmasked, his face a map of scars and exhaustion, the mismatched eyes, one blue, one red, scanning the void. Sitting on a chaise lounge that seemed to be made of purple smoke was Sage Lex. She held a teacup that refilled itself every time she took a sip. You're rushing the tempo, darling, Sage drawled, examining her nails. We just had the reunion episode with the drag queens. The audience needs a breather. A moment to digest the trauma. You can't just sprint up a mountain to fight concepts without a montage. I don't have time for a montage, Sage, Jeremiah snapped, running a hand through his hair. Kiesza's drop is inbound. 30 minutes. If we don't secure those stabilizers, I burn out. The crew burns out. The narrative collapses. The narrative is resilient, Sage countered, blowing a ring of lavender smoke. It survives because of pacing. You're treating this saga like a sprint. It's an endurance run on a treadmill made of sandpaper. Sit down. Have a biscuit. Jeremiah stopped pacing. He looked at the walls of the green room, which were starting to flicker, not like a glitch, but like a film reel catching in a projector. I'm not sitting, Jeremiah said, his voice low. And stop talking about pacing. You're the producer, not the writer. I'm the one bleeding out there. He narrowed his eyes, looking at the flickering wall. What is this place, really? We keep coming back here. Sage, what exactly constitutes the dreamscape? Sage opened her mouth to answer with a witty deflection, but the sound didn't come out. Instead, the sound looped. The T, the T, the T. Sage froze. The lavender smoke stagnated in the air, refusing to dissipate. The green room didn't dissolve. It was overwritten. A new voice entered the space. It did not boom like a whispered like a metronome. The dreamscape, the voice said, soft and terrifyingly calm, is merely a waiting room for those terrified of the end. The velvet walls peeled away, revealing the cold, biting wind of a mountain summit. Sage vanished, edited out of the frame. Jeremiah stood alone, shivering as the reality of Era 3 crashed back in, and standing before him, floating inches off the ground in a dress that seemed to be woven from the event horizon of a black hole, was May. The monologue of the circle. May turns to the camera. Her eyes are deep pools of purple fire, reflecting timelines that have already died. May. Voiceover. You cling so desperately to your lines. Your Act 1, your climax, your resolution. You believe that time is a river, flowing from a source to a sea. How quaint. How linear. I am May. I am the weaver of loops. And I am here to correct your geometry. You see, the Saga of Scars is not a story of survival. It is a story of repetition. You fight, you bleed, you heal, and then you fight again. You call it progress. I call it a cage. You run toward the future, breathless and hopeful, never realizing that the future is just the past wearing a different mask. The Court of Contradictions does not seek to burn the world. Fire is too simple. We seek to unravel it, to pull the thread of consequence until the fabric of your little melodrama falls apart. Jeremiah asks, what constitutes the dreamscape? A foolish question. The real question is, what constitutes the awake? If you bleed but learn nothing, are you truly alive? Or are you just a recording, playing the same track until the vinyl wears thin? Let us see if the Scar Krew can endure a song that never ends. Scene 1. The Summit of Variables. The summit of Twin Peaks offered a panoramic view of the necrosis that was San Francisco. The fog, Carl, as the locals affectionately named the sentient miasma, swirled around the base of the mountain, isolating the peaks like islands in a gray ocean. The Court of Contradictions stood waiting. They did not look like soldiers. They looked like art. May stood at the precipice, her hands folded into the sleeves of her silk robes. Beside her was Rohan Chance, wearing a tuxedo that seemed to vibrate with neon pinstripes. He was flipping a coin, but the coin never landed. It simply dissolved and reappeared in his other hand. To the right, sitting cross-legged on a floating jagged rock, was Kai Nova, the quantum echo. He flickered. One moment he was wearing a black hoodie, the next, a white windbreaker. He looked like a bad reception on an old television, and leaning against a radio tower that twisted into the sky was Nyala Sahara, the Mirage Weaver. She was draped in indigo silks that moved like smoke. She was hard to look at, literally. The eye slid off her, refusing to focus. Vector confirmed. Aleph Zero intoned. The null architect stood in the back, a silhouette of pure static. Kiesza's transport enters atmospheric range in T-28 minutes. Probability of interception by local factions, 94%. Let them come, Rohan laughed. The sound was like dice rattling in a cup. I bet on the underdogs. The payout is better. They are not underdogs, May corrected, her voice devoid of humor. They are anomalies. Jeremiah Crumpler. The kinetic void. The glitch. The assassin. They rely on the physics of action and reaction. We must introduce them to the physics of absurdity. She turned her gaze down the mountain path, where 4 figures were trudging up the incline, battered, bruised, and carrying the weight of their recent victory in the Castro. Here they come, May whispered. So eager to reach the next plot point. Let us pause them. Scene 2. The collision of philosophies. The crew crested the ridge. They looked rough. Jeremiah's face was exposed, the scars livid in the cold mountain air. Samson held his ribs, his gray tactical weave scorched from the shotgun blast. Florence was checking the capacitors on her sonic rifle, muttering about battery life. Helena moved silently on the flank, her Oni mask gleaming in the twilight. They stopped when they saw the court. Hold up, Jeremiah signaled, raising a fist. He squinted at the 5 figures blocking the path to the summit plateau. Who invited the anime convention? Careful, Blade, Samson rumbled, his hand drifting to the hilt of the Acrofina. These are not scavengers. Look at their flow. It is wrong. It does not vibrate. It stays still. Greetings, Scar Krew, May said. Her voice carried without shouting, echoing as if spoken from inside their own heads. You are late. Or perhaps you are early. In a loop, it is difficult to tell. Jeremiah stepped forward, twirling his carbon steel staff. Look, lady. We've had a long day. We've fought drag queens, we made friends with drag queens, and I really just want to pick up my Amazon package and go home. Step aside. Home, Nyala purred, her voice sounding like wind through dry leaves. Is that the hotel room in Vegas? Or the trailer in Modesto? Jeremiah stiffened. How do you know about that? We know the shape of your scars, Jeremiah, May said. We are the Court of Contradictions. We do not want your supply drop. We want your momentum. You believe you are the heroes of this era, but you are merely kinetic energy waiting to be dispersed. Disperse this, Florence yelled, leveling her rifle. Drop the beat. Wait. Samson roared. But the tempo was set. The conversation ended. The deconstruction began. Scene 3. The deconstruction of logic. The battle that followed was not a fight. A fight implies an exchange of blows, a struggle for dominance. This was a dismantling. It was a lesson in why physics hates a paradox. Matchup 1. The anchor versus the absurd. Samson versus Rohan. Samson saw the threat. Rohan, the man in the vibrating tuxedo, stepped forward with a casual, jaunty stride. Samson analyzed the vector. No weapon. No armor. High confidence. I will not be moved, Samson stated, dropping into his fudodachi, immovable stance. He rooted himself to the earth, preparing to absorb energy or deflect mass. He was the kinetic void. The harder they hit, the harder they fell. Rohan didn't hit. He didn't fire a beam. He just snapped his fingers. Snake eyes, big guy. Rohan grinned. Rohan manipulated the local probability field. Specifically, he adjusted the coefficient of friction between Samson's tactical boots and the granite rock face. He set the variable to 0. The effect was instantaneous and humiliating. Samson, the immovable object, suddenly had the traction of a grease fire on ice. His feet slid out from under him. What? Samson gasped, his arms windmilling. He tried to correct, using his master-level kenjutsu footwork to find balance, but Rohan snapped his fingers again. And let's add a little spice, Rohan laughed. What are the odds of a micrometeorite strike right now? Technically, the odds were 1 in several billion. Rohan made it 100%. A tiny rock, no larger than a marble, fell from the upper atmosphere at terminal velocity. It didn't hit Samson. That would be lethal. It struck the hilt of the Aquafina sword, just as Samson tried to plant it for stability. Ping. The kinetic transfer was perfect. The sword was ripped from Samson's grip, spinning away over the edge of the cliff. Samson, the great samurai, slid helplessly onto his back, sliding down the slight incline of the plateau like a child on a sled. Discipline, Rohan called out, checking his watch, is no match for bad math. Matchup 2. The rhythm versus the stutter. Tempo versus May. Florence saw Samson go down and panicked. Big guy. She turned her sonic rifle toward May. You want a loop? I'll give you a feedback loop. She charged the capacitors. The gun whined, building up a dissonance beam capable of shattering concrete. She needed 1 second to fire. Just the pull of a trigger. May watched her with a look of pity. She raised one elegant hand and made a pinching motion in the air. Tempo is a construct of linear time, May lectured. Let us edit your timeline. May initiated a temporal trap. She didn't freeze time. She looped it. She isolated a 3-second window of reality centered solely on Florence's right index finger. Florence pulled the trigger. Click. The firing pin started to move. Rewind. Florence's finger moved back to the guard. Florence pulled the trigger. Click. Rewind. Florence pulled the trigger. Click. What the hell? Florence screamed. Fire! Why won't it fire? She tried to stop. She tried to drop the gun, but her finger was caught in the causality loop. She was forced to pull the trigger, over and over again, never reaching the moment of discharge. The drop that never drops, May whispered, drifting closer. The anticipation is delicious, is it not? You are trapped in the stutter, my dear. A song with no chorus. Florence fell to her knees, screaming in frustration, her hand a blur of repetitive motion, her mind fracturing as the rhythm of her own existence was denied. Matchup 3. The precision versus the cloud. Helena versus Kai. Helena Lewis did not scream. She did not panic. She adapted. Seeing the frontal assault fail, she engaged Shadowfang protocols. She vanished into the twilight shadows, circling wide. She identified the target, Kai Nova. The flickering boy. Target acquisition. Neck exposed. Lethal strike. In the darkness, her twin commas scissoring toward Kai's throat. It was a perfect kill shot. The blades connected. They passed through him like smoke. Kai didn't dodge. He simply wasn't there anymore. Or rather, he was there but in a different state of probability. Helena landed in a crouch, confused. She spun around. Kai was standing behind her, leaning against a rock that hadn't been there a second ago. "You are trying to slice integers," Kai said, his voice sounding like two people speaking at once, one near, one far. "I am an imaginary number." Helena slashed again. This time, Kai flickered to the left. But he didn't just move. He left a ghost behind. Helena struck the ghost. Her comma stuck in the empty air, held fast by a pocket of solidified time. "Release," Helena hissed, tugging at the weapon. Kai reached out. He didn't attack her. He touched the hilt of the comma she was holding. "Superposition collapse," Kai murmured. He imposed a reality where Helena had dropped the weapon 10 minutes ago. The universe corrected itself to match his assertion. The comma vanished from her hand. "You cannot kill a ghost with a knife," Kai whispered, flickering until his face was inches from her Oni mask. "And you cannot hide from someone who occupies all the hiding spots simultaneously." Helena backed away, weaponless, slashing at the air with empty hands, fighting a probability cloud that refused to coalesce into a solid enemy. Matchup 4. The trauma is the mirage. Jeremiah versus Nyala. Jeremiah stood alone in the center of the collapse. Samson was sliding. Florence was stuttering. Helena was disarmed. The red eye of the Yami flow flared. The obsidian clover state. Rage. Pure kinetic rage. "Enough games," Jeremiah roared. The scars on his face burned. "I'm going to cut you all into..." "Shh," Nyala whispered. She didn't step forward. She simply exhaled. A wave of indigo haze rolled over the plateau. "You are so loud, Jeremiah." Nyala's voice came from everywhere. "So angry. But anger is just a cover for the grief, isn't it?" She shifted the atmospheric rendering. The wind died. The cold mountain air vanished. The smell of pine and ozone was replaced by the scent of stale cigarette smoke, cheap carpet cleaner, and despair. Jeremiah blinked. The mountain was gone. He was standing in a hotel room. The hotel room. Las Vegas. The wallpaper was peeling. The neon sign outside blinked red, casting long, bloody shadows across the bed. And on the bed, sitting with her back to him, was Mariah. "No," Jeremiah whispered, the staff shaking in his hands. "No, this isn't real." "You're a mirage." "Am I?" The figure on the bed turned. It was Mariah, but her eyes were black pits of static. "Does it matter if I'm real, Jerry? You're still here. You never left this room. The spire, the Scar Krew, the mask. It's all just a fever dream you made up to stop feeling guilty." The heat of the room pressed against him, tactile, suffocating. The Hikari, light, side of Jeremiah's flow, the depressive, analytical side, latched onto the image. It recognized the truth of the pain. "Black ice protocol," Nyala whispered. The depression solidified. Jeremiah's legs locked. He felt the weight of the world on his chest. He couldn't move. He couldn't breathe. He was trapped in the memory, paralyzed by a manufactured truth that felt heavier than the mountain he was standing on. He dropped the staff. It clattered on the floor of the hotel room. Or was it the rock of the summit? He fell to his knees, reaching out for a ghost that wasn't there. "I'm sorry," Jeremiah sobbed, broken by the mirage. "I'm so sorry." Scene IV. The suspended note. The plateau was silent, save for the pathetic sounds of defeat. The rhythmic clicking of Florence's trigger. The scrape of Samson's boots against rock. The quiet sobbing of Jeremiah Crumpler. The Court of Contradictions watched, untouched. They had not thrown a punch. They had simply applied their philosophy to the crew's reality, and the crew had shattered. "Inevitability," May said, smoothing her silk robes. "It is the only law that matters." Then, a sound cut through the silence. A deep, thrumming vibration. The whine of high-altitude turbines engaging vertical thrusters. High above, cutting through the swirling gloom of Carl the Fog, brilliant white floodlights stabbed down. They illuminated the scene, the broken heroes and the serene monsters. The supply drop, the massive, heavily armored transport ship descended from the clouds. It bore the insignia of Director Kiesza's faction. It was the lifeline. The stabilizers, the only thing that could save Jeremiah from burning out. But it didn't land. It hovered there, suspended in the air, 100 feet out of reach. A tantalizing promise of salvation that was just too far away. May looked up at the blinding lights, her purple eyes narrowing. She raised a hand, not to wave, but to grasp. "The prize arrives," May whispered. "Let us see if they can catch it before we unravel the sky." The ship hung there, a suspended note in a song that had just turned into a dirge. Narrative end. Narrator log. May. Status. Chapter complete. Observation. The linear progression has been disrupted. The variables have been isolated and neutralized.
Name, Saga of Scars, 3. First Light, Chapter 18, Location, the skies above Twin Peaks, the summit, Director Kiesza, the architect of minds, I. The view from the zenith, the calculus of failure. The Requiem does not fly, it dissects the atmosphere. It is a salvaged Legion transport, stripped of its brutish aesthetic and rebuilt by Ren Sato into a masterpiece of utilitarian defiance. We hang suspended in the upper atmosphere, the thrusters burning a silent blue against the gray ceiling of the miasma. I stand behind the pilot's console, my hands clasped behind my back. My posture is rigid. My mind is not. I am processing data at a rate of 4.2 terabytes per second. The hypercognition granted by the Genesis flow allows me to see the battlefield below not as a tragedy, but as a series of failing equations. Status, I command. My voice is the hum of a server room, cool, sterile, and absolute. Ren Sato, the wirehead, does not look up. He is 55 years old, his spine curved from decades spent hunched over logic gates. His hands, stained with grease and conductive ink, blur across the holographic interface of the Requiem. He is a man of zero social friction. He speaks only in deliverables. Hover stabilizers are locked by an external temporal clamp, Ren reports, his voice dry. The localized time distortion is holding the ship in stasis. Engines are running at 110%, but our velocity relative to the ground is 0. We are a fly in amber, Director. I look through the reinforced glass. Below us, on the desolate plateau of Twin Peaks, I see the catastrophic decoherence of Provisional Task Force Alpha 7, the Scar Krew. It is a complete strategic collapse. I see Samson, the unmoving rock, sliding helplessly toward a cliff edge. His friction coefficient has been nullified. He is flailing, an indignity that burns me to witness. I see Florence Baxter, Tempo, trapped in a stuttering loop, her sonic rifle charging and failing in a 3-second purgatory. I see Helena Lewis, Shadow Fang, slashing at empty air, her stealth rendered obsolete by an enemy who exists in superposition. And I see Jeremiah, my eyes narrow. Jeremiah Crumpler is kneeling in the mud, weeping. He is not fighting the enemy. He is fighting a memory. He is trapped in a mirage, a psychological overlay that has locked his Hikari, depressive, protocols into a terminal freeze. They are fighting variables with constants, I state, the analysis completing in my mind. The Court of Contradictions does not use force. They use entropy. They are rewriting the axioms of the battlefield. Behind me, the specialized unit I have assembled, my Cortex Command, prepares for the incision. They are not warriors. They are corrections. Raina Kale, the resonance keeper, sits on the folding bench. Her silver white hair shimmers with the iridescent blues of her resonance imprint flow. She is trembling, her pale hands gripping her knees. She is not afraid. She is feeling the overwhelming psychic weight of Jeremiah's grief washing over her. She is the antenna that picks up the signal of the broken. Anya Volkov, the shard weaver, is pacing. Her movement is disjointed, a glitch in the biological feed. One moment her eyes are the soft, fearful gray of Lena, the isolate. The next, they flash with the crimson rage of Katerina, the aggressor. She is a fractured prism, holding a dozen different tactical responses in a single body. Elias Vance, the disconnect, is huddled in the corner. My child, my greatest failure, and my most potent weapon. Their violet eyes dart frantically, scanning the binary code that pulses beneath their skin. They are scratching at their arm, the fractured logic flow leaking from them like static electricity. They are processing the battlefield's chaos so fast it is burning their synapses. Dr. Evelyn Reed stands by the medical bay, checking the bioenergetic stabilizers. She is the calm center. Her presence is a biorestoration grid, waiting to accept the damaged inputs. Ren, I say. The temporal clamp is a closed loop. It requires a logical sequence to maintain integrity. Elias? Elias flinches as I say their name. Too much noise, Director. The sequence is A to B to A. It's perfect. It's hateful. Break it, I order. Ren, disengage safety protocols. We are inserting a new logic into the system. Ren's fingers dance, dropping the shield harmonics to breach frequency. Initiating hardlock descent in 3, 2, the correction, tactical insertion. The requiem screams. It is not a sound of metal stress. It is the sound of Ren Cito's sonic cannons clearing a path through the laws of physics. The ship drops like a stone, shattering the temporal hold simply by introducing too much mass for me to calculate in real time. Listen to me, I broadcast. My telepathic voice overrides the Scar Krew's comms, bypassing the static, bypassing the panic. I speak directly into their cognitive schema. You are fighting distortions. You cannot punch a probability. You cannot shoot a time loop. We are the patch. The ramp drops while we are still 50 feet off the deck. The wind of the scarred world howls into the bay, smelling of ozone and impossible geometry. Execute Operation Absolute Zenith, I command. Restore equilibrium, matchup 1. The probability correction. Target Rohan, the Chance Weaver, versus Ren Sato, the Wirehead, and Samson. Samson is seconds away from sliding off the mountain. The friction of the ground is still 0. Above him, the micrometeorite summoned by Rohan is streaking down at terminal velocity. Rohan stands on the ridge, his neon pinstriped tuxedo vibrating. He flips his coin. Heads, you fall. Tails, you burn. The house always wins. Ren Sato does not leave the pilot's chair. He does not need to. He rotates the Requiem's ventral thrusters, aiming them not at the enemy, but at the ground around Samson. Deploying gravimetric anchors, Ren drones, his voice flat, reasserting Newtonian constants, compensating for probability deviation. THROOM. 4 heavy metallic pylons shoot from the ship's belly, embedding themselves into the rock around Samson. They don't explode. They hum. The correction, Ren Sato is a master of hyper-technical proficiency. He effectively hacks the local physics engine. The pylons generate a localized hardlock gravity field. Suddenly, the chance variable is overwritten by a mass constant. The zero friction curse evaporates, replaced by a gravity well that is 3x standard Earth normal. Samson slams to a halt. His boots don't just find traction, they crack the bedrock. He is anchored by the weight of physics itself. The meteorite. Elias twitches, monitoring the sensors. Impact in 0.4. Samson looks up. He has footing. He has weight. The unmoving rock is back. He raises the Acrofina. He does not block. Ren's gravity field would crush him if he took the hit static. He uses Tai Sabaki, evasion/deflection. The meteorite strikes the flat of the blade. Because Ren has restored the friction, Samson's stance holds. He angles the blade, and the meteorite ricochets, screaming off the steel and slamming into the cliff face behind Rohan. Rohan stumbles, the shockwave knocking his coin into the mud. That was a statistical impossibility. Your sample size was too small, Ren mutters over the external speakers. I corrected the variance. Matchup 2, the logic jam. Target, me, the loop weaver, versus Elias Vance, the disconnect, and Tempo. Tempo is still screaming in silence. Click. Rewind. She is trapped in the drop that never drops. May watches her, a serene smile on her face, weaving the timeline like a tapestry. Elias, I say, placing a hand on my child's shoulder. She is running a pristine code. It has no error handling. Elias uncurls. Their violet eyes glow with a terrifying, frantic intensity. They step to the edge of the ramp. They do not see a woman in void silk. They see a repeating algorithm. Pattern, redundant, Elias whispers, their weave fractured logic flow. Inputting infinite noise. Elias extends a hand. They act as a living jammer. They do not attack May with force. They attack her with data. Elias projects a system overload, a massive, disorganized burst of raw information, white noise, conflicting sensor data, and chaotic algorithms directly into the temporal bubble. The correction. May's loop relies on a clean sequence, a right arrow B, right arrow A. Elias introduces a right arrow omega, right arrow 4, right arrow blue right arrow, static right arrow neo L. The loop cannot process the chaos. The temporal bubble shudders, turning a violent, sickly gray. May gasps, clutching her head as the feedback screams through her mind. Crack. The loop shatters. Tempo stumbles forward, the trigger finally completing its motion. The beam she was trying to fire for the last 3 minutes erupts from her rifle. It is not a controlled shot. It is a backlog of pent-up sonic fury. The blast hits the ground at May's feet, launching the loop weaver backward into a pile of scree. Buffering complete, Tempo gasps, falling to one knee, nose bleeding. She looks up at Elias, who is shaking on the ramp. Thanks for the bandwidth, Spooky. Matchup 3, the fog of war. Target, Kai, the quantum echo, versus Anya Volkov, the shard weaver, and Helena. Helena is exhausted. She is slashed and bleeding. Kai is everywhere and nowhere, a probability cloud that mocks her precision. Anya, I command. He thinks he is the only one who is fragmented. Show him the swarm. Anya Volkov stands at the bay door. She closes her eyes. When she opens them, the iris shifts from gray to a fractured kaleidoscope. Time to play, she whispers. But the voice is a chorus. Anya leaps. She utilizes her echoing fragments flow. As she falls, she splits. One, Anya, becomes Vera, the reality dissociator. Another becomes Katerina, the aggressor. Another becomes Irina, the defender. The correction. Kai relies on being the only variable in a fixed room. Anya turns the room into a hall of mirrors. Vera lands and unleashes a reality dissociation aura. The air becomes thick, unreal, and depersonalized. Kai's ability to superimpose himself falters, because he can no longer distinguish which reality is the prime one. Katerina charges, screaming, swinging a manifested energy shard. Kai flickers to dodge, but Irina is already there, blocking his exit vector with a defensive barrier. Kai stumbles, his form flickering rapidly. I can't lock a position. Too many observers. Anya, the prime, steps out of the confusion. She utilizes cognitive blank slate, erasing her presence from his immediate awareness. She is a ghost hunting a ghost. You are not a wave, Anya whispers in his ear. You are just a particle that hasn't been hit yet. She strikes. A shard of crystallized trauma slams into Kai's shoulder, forcing his waveform to collapse. He hits the ground, solid. Bleeding. Helena steps out of the shadow, her Oni mask glowing. She sees the blood. Target acquired. Matchup 4, the resonance of truth. Target, Nyala, the Mirage Weaver, versus Reyna Kael, the Resonance Keeper, and Jeremiah. This is the critical front. The Requiem hovers directly over the hotel room hallucination. Jeremiah is catatonic. Nyala stands over him, feeding on the Hikari depression, weaving the voice of false comfort. Reyna, I say softly. You have the floor. Reyna Kael does not jump. She steps onto the repulsor platform Ren lowers. She is unarmed. She wears simple robes of muted earth tones. She descends into the nightmare not as a soldier, but as a truth. She walks toward the mirage. Nyala sees her and sneers. Another broken doll? Nyala laughs, the air around her shifting into indigo haze. Come, child. Let me show you your loneliness. Nyala projects a nightmare at Reyna. She shows Reyna a world where no one hears her, where she is invisible. But Reyna does not flinch. She has lived in the void of emotional invalidation her entire life. She was forged in the silence. Nyala's illusions are amateur theater compared to the reality Reyna survives every day. Reyna activates the unveiling echo. A sphere of pure silver blue light expands from her body. It is not aggressive, it is simply true. As the light touches the neon mirage of the Las Vegas hotel room, the illusion dissolves. The smell of stale smoke is replaced by the crisp, cold air of Twin Peaks. The tactile heat fades. The image of crying Mariah shimmers, looks at Jeremiah one last time, and evaporates. Reyna kneels before Jeremiah. She places a pale hand on his armored shoulder. She uses empathy resonance. She does not take his pain away. She does not tell him it wasn't his fault. She validates it. Jeremiah, she says, her voice cutting through the remaining static. You are not in the room. You are in the fight. That guilt? It is yours. It is real. But she points at Nyala. She is a lie. Jeremiah gasps. It is a ragged, ugly sound. His single blue eye, the Hikari eye, snaps open. The black ice that was freezing his motor functions melts, replaced by a cold, crystalline clarity. He looks at Reyna, then he looks at Nyala. The hallucination is gone. Only the woman in the silk dress remains. Jeremiah stands up. The Oathkeeper snaps into his hand. He is no longer fighting a memory. Thanks, Doc, Jeremiah grunts, his voice thick with repressed rage. He turns to Nyala. The Yami eye flares crimson, swirling with the obsidian clover energy. You made me drop my staff. I hate it when people make me drop my stuff. I stand at the console, watching the tide turn. Rensato brings the Requiem around for a strafing run, his hands dancing over the controls to keep the gravimetric anchors locked. Dr. Reed, I say, prepare the biorestoration grid. They will have injuries, but they will be physical ones. Those we can treat. Affirmative. Dr. Reed replies, her voice calm amidst the alarms. I look down at the Scar Krew. They are messy. They are chaotic. They are inefficient. They are everything my light usually seeks to purge. But in this moment, they are effective. Scar Krew, I broadcast, my voice ringing with the authority of the architect. The variables have been purged. The board is reset. You have exactly 3 minutes before their distortion adapts to my light. I pause. Stop fighting like victims. Fight like the glitch. The Court of Contradictions is in session, and the verdict is violence. Ren, I say, get us clear. Let them work. Copy that, Director, Ren says, banking the ship. Enjoy the show. Narrative end.
Name, Saga of Scars, Act 3, First Light, Chapter 19, The Housewarming, Location, Twin Peaks Summit / Safe House Beta, The Point, OV, Sage, The Echo of Aegis, the narrator Sage. Sage is present, though invisible, lounging on a cloud of lavender mist that hovers just above the timeline, stirring a cup of tea that smells like ozone and irony. Sage, voiceover, and cut. Scene, please, hold your applause, darlings. I know the crescendo was magnificent. The tension? Exquisite. The physics? Entirely optional. But now comes the part of the saga that the history books and the action movies usually edit out. We call this the cool down. You see, Jeremiah believes the hardest part of being a hero is the sword fighting. It isn't. The hardest part is the logistics. The adrenaline is fading, the cortisol is crashing, and the realization is setting in that you have to coexist with your coworkers in a concrete box that smells of damp wool and existential dread. Welcome to the base building episode. Do grab a snack. The inventory management is about to begin. 1. The retreat The fade out. The Court of Contradictions did not retreat in a panic. That would imply they respected the laws of drama. Instead, as the heavy shadow of the Requiem fell over the summit like a judgmental thundercloud, May and her motley crew simply buffered. It began with a visual tearing in the atmosphere. Rohan tossed his coin, but gravity forgot to call it back down. It dissolved into a stream of binary code. May, the loop weaver, looked up at the descending dropship with the expression of someone who has just realized the restaurant is out of their preferred vintage. The pacing is accelerated, May whispered, her voice sounding like a corrupted audio file skipping on a scratch. We shall reconvene in the margins, and then, pop! No smoke bomb, no swirling portal. They simply dropped out of the server. Jeremiah stood there, chest heaving, his mismatched eyes, one blue, one burning red, scanning the empty air where a villain had stood seconds ago. He didn't look triumphant. He looked like a man who had just survived a very bad hallucinogenic trip and couldn't find his car keys. They just left? Jeremiah rasped, lowering the Oathkeeper. The blade hissed as it cooled in the snow. No monologue? No, I'll get you next time, Gadget? Samson, currently dusting snow off his modern samurai wu-wear, resheathed his massive acrofina. The sound was a heavy, metallic thud that signaled the end of violence. They are not soldiers, Blade. They are concepts. They do not lose. They merely run out of arguments. I hate concepts, Jeremiah grumbled, spitting a glob of blood onto the pristine white snow. You can't stab a concept. 2. The deal. The merger. The silence of the mountain was shattered by the hydraulic whine of the Requiem touching down. The ramp hissed open, releasing a cloud of pressurized steam and the scent of incredibly expensive air filtration systems. Director Kiesza walked down the ramp. She didn't walk. She executed a movement algorithm. Every step was efficient, cold, and terrifyingly precise. She was flanked by her Cortex Command, the terrifying children she calls a team. Jeremiah sheathed his katana, leaning heavily against a rock. Nice landing, Director. I see you brought the cavalry. I hope that ship is full of whiskey and painkillers, because I am fresh out of both. Kiesza stopped 3 feet from him. She looked at the battered crew. Florence twitching from the caffeine crash, Helena perched on a ledge like a gargoyle, Samson looking like a bruised mountain. Alcohol and narcotics are inefficient coping mechanisms, Mr. Crumpler, Kiesza stated, her voice devoid of warmth. And you are mistaken. This is not a supply drop. It's not? Florence asked, hugging her sonic rig. Then what is it? A prank? It is a merger, Kiesza corrected. The battlefield data indicates that while your Scar Krew possesses high raw potential, your logistical and tactical infrastructure is pathetic. Sage. Voiceover. Oh, snap! She went for the infrastructure burn. The brutality is distinct, isn't it? Kiesza gestured to the figures descending behind her. I am permanently assigning assets to your cell, to ensure you do not die from preventable incompetence. She pointed to the man with the grease-stained hands and the AR goggles. Rensado. Call sign, the wirehead. He will manage your tech and transport. Do not speak to him about feelings. He does not have them. Ren didn't wave. He just tapped his temple. Your comms encryption is garbage, by the way. I fixed it while we were landing. You're welcome. Dr. Evelyn Reed, Kiesza continued, pointing to the woman with the kind eyes and the medical bag. She will ensure your biological functions do not cease. And the new blood? Jeremiah narrowed his eyes at the shadows still lingering on the ramp. 2 specialists, Kiesza said, selected specifically to counterbalance your volatility. First, a figure stepped out that defied the military aesthetic entirely. Leif Magnus Johansson. Call sign Shortcut. He was short, barely reaching Samson's chest, with a nervous, kinetic energy that made him seem to vibrate in place. He looked less like a soldier and more like a glitch in the simulation. He presented with a distinctly pangender aesthetic, a blur of gender markers that refused to settle. He wore oversized, iridescent gear that swallowed his small frame, and his hair was a modern, edgy mohawk dyed in a spectrum of vibrant, shifting rainbow hues. He adjusted his thick, nerdy goggles, his fingers twitching. Hi. Hello. The probability of me tripping on this ramp was 14%, but I phased the friction coefficient, so we're good, Leif stammered, his voice rapid-fire staccato. I moved your backpack, by the way. It was heavy. You're welcome, Florence blinked, checking her back. Her rig was gone, sitting neatly on a crate 10 feet away. Yo, Florence said, impressed. Fast kid. I like the hair. And the second? Samson asked, looking past the vibrating youth. The second figure emerged slowly, and the air temperature seemed to drop and become humid, heavy with the scent of wet earth and ancient water. Terra Nix. Call sign, Erosion. She looked like a monster. Her skin was a map of cracked earth, fissures running along her arms and face that pulsed with a faint, unsettling green light. She wore heavy boots and cargo pants stained with the mud of the Louisiana bayou. She looked like something that had crawled out of a swamp to die. But when she stopped, she reached out and touched a dead, frozen shrub. Under her hand, green moss instantly bloomed, soft and vibrant. A single white flower spiraled open in the snow. "The mountain is cold," Tara said, her voice a low, rhythmic rumble, like water moving over stone. "It sleeps too deep. It needs roots." "She is a healer," Kiesza clarified, seeing Jeremiah's hand drift to his sword. "And a geomancer. She controls the water, the earth, and the biology of the battlefield. Do not let her appearance deceive you. She is the most stable thing in this state. We are establishing a forward operating base," Kiesza commanded. "Safe House Beta is compromised. We are making it the point. 3. The point. Base building montage. Sage. Voiceover. Cue the montage music. Something with a heavy bass line, the sound of power tools, and perhaps a little jazz flute for texture." The team descended from the peak. It was a tomb, a concrete box smelling of apathy and stagnant air. But put a bunch of traumatized super soldiers in a room with unlimited tech and a desire to nest, and you get extreme interior design. The armory, Samson's dojo. Samson took the east wing. He cleared out the rot. He set up racks. Everything was aligned by size, lethality, and spiritual weight. "A weapon must rest before it can bite," he told Leaf, who was vibrating while trying to organize ammo crates by color rather than caliber. "But if we organize by color, the reload efficiency increases by 0.04 seconds because of visual recognition speed," Leaf argued, pushing his goggles up his nose. Samson just stared at him, until Leaf phased through a wall to escape the awkwardness. The lab, sterile zone. Wren and Dr. Reed claimed the basement. They hung plastic sheeting. They installed bright, white lights. It looked like an operating room inside a rave. "Do not bring the good vibes in here," Wren warned Florence. "I require 0 vibes. I require static, the rec room, the heart." This was the soul of the base. Tara walked into the corner, which was damp and leaking. Instead of fixing the leak, she placed her hand on the concrete. "Bloom," she whispered. Thick, lush moss erupted from the cracks, turning the cold industrial corner into a soft, living wall of green. Ferns spiraled out of the ceiling vents. "It breathes now," Tara smiled, a small, sad expression that cracked the hardened exterior of her face. "Better." Jeremiah dragged scavenged couches into a circle. Florence wired a sound system that could technically liquefy organs if turned past Volume 4. Neon signs scavenged from the Castro were hung on the walls. One flickered pink. "Gentrification is the real virus. It adds character," Jeremiah insisted, putting his feet up on a table made of a repurposed server rack. "It feels like home." The Neighbors, comedy section. Sage, voiceover. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. The sitcom element. Because what is a new home without nosy neighbors? And in San Francisco, the neighbors are distinct. Knock, knock, knock. A polite, rhythmic pounding echoed from the massive blast doors. The room froze. Everyone drew a weapon. Even Leaf panicked, phasing halfway into the floor so only his rainbow mohawk was visible. "We're in a sealed bunker," Helena hissed from the top of the fridge. "Who knocks?" Samson approached the door. He spun the wheel. The heavy steel groaned open. Standing there, framed by the swirling Carl fog, were 3 figures who defied every law of fashion and mortality. The painted ladies of the apocalypse. "Housewarming," Sleigh Bell announced, her voice booming like an opera singer in a canyon. "We saw the lights. We heard the bass. We brought gifts." She swept past a stunned Samson, her skirt knocking over a stack of ammo crates with a sound like timber falling. "Oh, darling," she surveyed the rec room with critical, hollow eyes. "It's very brutalist, very bunker chic. But it lacks texture. Where is the velvet?" "We didn't pack velvet," Jeremiah stammered, standing up. "What are you doing here?" "We're neighbors, Jerry," Lorraine shouted, placing a heavy crate on the table. "I brought the fermented radiator fluid. It's a 2024 vintage. Very spicy. Good for the portfolio. And muffins," Ash added, giggling as she tossed a bag to Florence. "Don't ask about the flour. Just eat around the crunchy bits. They vibrate." Ash spotted Samson. The massive samurai was trying to blend into the wall. Ash drifted over, her eyes swirling with psychedelic colors. She trapped him in the corner. Well, hello, Mountain, she purred, looking up at him. I like a man who can block a meteor. Very sturdy. Do you vibrate? Samson, a man who had faced demons and armies, looked utterly terrified. I am an anchor, he rumbled, his voice cracking slightly. I do not vibrate. I am steadfast. Boring, Ash winked. We can fix that. Have some radiator fluid. Meanwhile, Leaf popped out of the floor next to Tara. That lady is wearing a house, Leaf whispered, his eyes wide behind his goggles. Logistically, the drag coefficient on that dress must be insane. Tara looked at Slay Bell, then at the moss she had grown in the corner. She is rotted, Tara murmured softly, not in judgment, but in recognition. But she blooms in her own way. Jeremiah watched the scene. Leaf was calculating the physics of Slay Bell's dress. Tara was watering a fern with her own tears. Florence was teaching Lorray how to use the DJ deck. No, darling. More reverb. He looked at the bottle of radiator fluid in his hand. Then at his team. This is it, Jeremiah muttered, cracking a smile that actually reached his eyes. This is the apocalypse. And it's weirdly okay. 6. The Dreamscape. Meta ending. The radiator fluid was strong. Jeremiah didn't fall asleep. He crashed. Darkness. Static. And then, the green room. Jeremiah blinked. He was back in the mental construct. The velvet ropes. The mirrors. Sage was there, sitting on her chaise lounge, sipping her constantly replenishing tea. Well done, darling, Sage grinned, raising her cup. You survived the bottle episode. The ratings are going to be steady, if unspectacular. Sage, Jeremiah groaned, rubbing his temples. Can we skip the critique? My head feels like Ash played a solo inside it. Nonsense. We must analyze the subtext of Bazit. The green room flickered. The velvet walls turned into a grid of blue lines. A door appeared where no door should be. It opened. Director Kiesza walked in. Into Jeremiah's dream. Into Sage's narrative space. She was holding a tablet. Jeremiah jumped back. What the hell? You can't be in here. This is my head. Kiesza didn't look at him. She looked at Sage. Narrative construct Sage, Kiesza said, her voice echoing with digital reverb. Your pacing analysis is inefficient. We are burning daylight. Sage dropped her teacup. It didn't break. It bounced. Excuse me? Sage stood up, her lavender mist flaring with indignation. This is my domain, you corporate algorithm. You cannot just Zoom call into the meta layer. There are rules. There is etiquette. I purchased the server space, Kiesza stated flatly, tapping her screen. I own the dream now, Mr. Crumpler. Wake up. The radiator fluid has metabolized. Patrol starts in 5 minutes. Terminate dream sequence. Kiesza tapped her tablet. The green room dissolved into white noise. Wait! Jeremiah screamed as he faded. She pays the bills? Sage. Voiceover. Fading out. Oh, the indignity. The absolute audacity. She does have a point about the schedule, though. Wakey wakey, eggs and Bay Scar Krew. The show must go on. Narrative end.
Saga name, Saga of Scars, sequence, rolling end credits / post-credit scene, location, Aegis Station / the Pyrenees Mountains, Spain, Pau, director Kiesza, the architect of minds. The air in the Pyrenees is thinner than in San Francisco, cleaner. It lacks the cloying sweetness of the Genesis strain and the metallic taste of Soulfire. Here, in the sterile white silence of Aegis Station, buried half a mile beneath the permafrost, there is only the hum of the servers and the cold logic of the light. I stand before the hollow wall, the blue light reflecting in the silver streaks of my hair. The battle for the summit is over. The housewarming is complete. The Scar Krew is drinking radiator fluid and celebrating survival. They think they have won a victory. I know they have merely completed a stress test. I raise my hand. The Genesis flow thrums beneath my skin, not as a wild river, but as a calibrated current. I do not see friends. I do not see heroes. I see raw data. I see potential energy waiting to be kineticized. Chaos is not an enemy if you have the right algorithm. Chaos is simply a resource waiting to be refined into soldiers. Computer, I command, my voice echoing in the empty command center. Update personnel files. Classification. Era 3 assets. Initialize chessboard protocol. The screen flickers. The faces of the damaged, the brave, and the insane begin to scroll. Asset group. The Vanguard Scar Krew. Greater than subject. Jeremiah Crumpler. The Obsidian Blade. Role. Frontline shock trooper / berserker. Utility high. Volatility index critical. Assessment. He believes he is a leader. Incorrect. He is a blunt instrument. A hammer looking for a nail. His trauma is his fuel source. If he heals, he becomes obsolete. Directive. Maintain his stress levels. Keep the wound fresh. A happy Jeremiah is a useless weapon. Greater than subject. Samson, the anchor. Role. Defensive pivot / moral stabilizer. Utility. Moderate. Assessment. He provides the gravity that keeps the cell from spinning into entropy. However, his morality is an inefficiency. He hesitates. He questions. Directive. Monitor interactions with subject Ash. Her chaotic influence risks destabilizing his coding. If he breaks, the cell fragments. Greater than subject. Florence Baxter. Tempo. Role. Sonic artillery / morale officer. Utility high. Potential. Uncapped. Assessment. She possesses the raw output of her predecessor, but lacks the discipline. She treats war like a playlist. Directive. Increase pressure. Force her to harmonize with the tactical grid, not the vibe. Greater than subject. Helena Lewis. Shadowfang. Role. Stealth / assassination. Utility. High. Assessment. The silence. The necessary darkness. She requires zero maintenance. She is the scalpel to Jeremiah's hammer. Directive. Deploy for wetwork operations where plausible deniability is required. Asset group. Cortex Command, the control group. Greater than subject. Ren Sato, the wirehead. Role. Technical support / transport. Utility. Essential. Assessment. Zero emotional quotient. Perfect operational efficiency. He prefers machines to people. Good. People are disappointing. Machines are programmable. Directive. Grant full access to Aegis fabrication protocols. Greater than subject. Dr. Evelyn Reed, the medic. Role. Biological maintenance. Utility. Essential. Assessment. She fixes the assets when they break. Her maternal instinct is a delusion, but it ensures she works double shifts to keep them alive. Directive. Ensure supply lines for medical synthesis remain open. We cannot afford to lose assets to infection. Greater than subject. Elias Vance, the handle. Role. Connection point / emotional tether. Utility. Complex. Assessment. My son. No. Correction. Asset Vance. He is the link between my logic and their madness. He is weak, twitchy, and compromised by fear. Directive. Protect at all costs. If he falls, the architecture of my own resolve requires recalculation. Greater than subject. Anya Volkov, Shardweaver. Role. Perimeter defense. Utility high. Assessment. A loyal dog. She asks no questions. She only bites. Directive. Position as bodyguard for Asset Vance. Asset group. The Elementals. New recruits. Greater than subject. Terra Nix. Erosion. Role. Environmental control / area denial. Utility. Hazardous. Assessment. A walking ecological disaster. She controls the battlefield terrain. Her psychological profile indicates a healer complex wrapped in a monster's skin. Directive. Use her self-loathing. She fears her own power. I will teach her that her power is the only thing that justifies her existence. Greater than subject. Leif Magnus Johansson. Shortcut. Role. Logistics / rapid deployment. Utility high. Irritation factor extreme. Assessment. The pangender aesthetic and rainbow follicle display are distracting, but the physics defy standard metrics. The subject vibrates with anxiety but moves faster than causality. Directive. Focus the anxiety. Weaponize the flight response. If he is running from his fears, aim him at the enemy. Asset group, local factions, the anomalies. Greater than subject, the painted ladies, Sleigh Bell, Ash, Luray. Role, regional warlords / chaos agents. Utility, conditional, assessment, undead drag queens. A grotesque manifestation of Era 3 reality distortion. Inefficient. Loud. Garish. Directive. Do not engage in their drama. Utilize them as a buffer state against the deeper city threats. Let them hold the line while we build the solution. Note, subject Ash's interest in Samson is a statistical outlier. Monitor closely. Asset group, hostiles, the Court of Contradictions. Greater than subject, May, the loop weaver, and Rohan, the coin. Role, antagonists / glitch vectors. Status, at large. Assessment, they are not soldiers, they are errors in the code. May attempts to edit the timeline. Rohan attempts to gamble with it. Directive, they are variables to be solved. Do not capture. Delete. Asset group, the meta layer. Greater than subject, Sage, the echo of Aegis. Role, narrator / observer. Utility, null. Assessment, the voice in the walls. She thinks she is watching a play. She thinks she is safe in her green room. She forgets who pays the server costs. Directive, ignore her commentary. Focus on the plot. If she becomes intrusive, unplug the narrative module. I swipe the screen away. The hologram dissolves into motes of blue light. Outside, the wind howls through the Pyrenees, a sound like a wolf hungry for the dawn. I do not feel hope. Hope is a passive variable. I feel certainty. I have the pieces. I have the board. The chaos is messy, yes. But if you press chaos hard enough, if you squeeze it with enough pressure and enough trauma, it turns into a diamond. And I will make them shine, whether they want to or not. End program, I whisper. The lights in the station dim. The screen goes black. Scroll stop, system standby.
To harder times. They say it's better when you look back on the climb.